After living like a widow for 2 years, Connie is stunned to realize that her husband has returned from the war only to be carried out of a car with no use of his legs. A man who fights overseas to defend his country should be a source of pride even if he returns badly wounded. But his wife cannot bring herself to feel happy in front of the family. She can only force a smile while carrying an overwhelming sense of loss inside. Back in their room, she tries to reassure Clifford that there is still hope for treatment, but when he tells her that they may never be able to share physical intimacy again, the news hits her like a bolt of lightning and leaves her frozen in place. She has longed for this for 2 years and waited for it for 2 years, believing that her needs would finally be met when her husband came home, only to be faced with this devastating outcome. As an aristocrat who owns an iron mine and bears a noble title, Clifford cannot accept what his injuries have made of him, so he points a gun at his head, hoping his death will set his wife free.
Fetch help, quick!
Leave us! Leave us! My poor darling. My poor...
He lies on the floor screaming and crying until his voice goes hoarse, unable to tell whether his wife truly loves him or merely pities him. Watching all of this, Connie is filled with pain and inner conflict. In the end, however, she decides to soothe her husband's wounded heart with her sincere devotion and endless love. She also understands that the rest of her life will be long and lonely, and that she will have to live like an ascetic. Even so, she is willing to remain by her husband's side and care for him, yet Connie's primal desire burns like wildfire, and there is no room for it in her quiet life, leaving her in constant pain and torment. But as if fate has other plans, Connie's life takes an unexpected turn during an afternoon walk with her husband. They meet the new gamekeeper, Oliver Mellors, a man who speaks little, wears a numb expression, and keeps everyone at an icy distance. Strangely enough, it is this unusual man whom Sir Clifford Chatterley comes to particularly favor.
The new gamekeeper. He served in my regiment.
Oh. You remember the man?
No.
Gradually, Connie also becomes curious about the mysterious gamekeeper. Using the delivery of a key as an excuse, she visits Mellors' cottage, but he treats her with open hostility and complains in a crude local dialect that she has disturbed his peaceful life.
My husband keeps the original and it's been difficult
I beg your ladyship's pardon, but I don't see it as asking too much to have a key to my own cottage.
You misunderstand. It's been difficult to find anyone, so I've brought you a duplicate.
You should have never gone to the trouble. I meant no disrespect. All I meant was that it wasn't important enough for you yourself to be put out over it. I'm very grateful to your ladyship.
Well, then all that was required was a simple word to that effect.
Deep down, however, Connie is irresistibly drawn to this disruptive presence, especially after receiving Mellors' letter of apology, and the feeling only grows stronger. The next day, she puts on an exquisite embroidered outfit and goes to see Mellors, only to catch an accidental glimpse of his bare torso. Her burning gaze makes no secret of her intense desire for his masculine body. Clasping her hands together, she walks toward the gamekeeper with almost bashful steps, hoping to get closer to him, but Mellors continues to keep his distance, his face solemn as though he has no interest in Connie's advances. Unable to resist, she teases him, saying, "Actually, I came here to draw."
Your ladyship can sit wherever she pleases. Only your ladyship wouldn't want me tinkering around and about when your ladyship were here.
Why should I mind you being here?
The nuisance of me.
Clearly you mean the nuisance of me. Am I such a nuisance?
Her few probing remarks leave Mellors with nothing to say.
Think it's best if I see to traps, my lady?
Disappointment flickers in Connie's eyes, and she angrily rises to leave. Connie seems irritated by his response, but a sudden downpour makes it nearly impossible for her to get home.
Is there shelter nearby?
Only the cottage, my lady.
Mellors reluctantly relents, and Connie follows him back to his cottage to shelter from the rain. Once inside, Connie casually removes her coat and crouches beside the stove in her lace blouse, warming herself alongside Mellors. But when Mellors sees the lady's alluring figure outlined by the rain, he backs away and places a rag between them as a barrier.
Why are you embarrassed?
I ain't. Please, my lady, if it became known we were here like this together, I'd lose more than my job.
From Mellors' slightly flustered words, Connie understands his helplessness, and once the rain stops, she hurries away. After everything that happened that day, Connie desperately tries to be intimate with her husband, but Clifford gives her no response. From that point on, Connie seems to make up her mind, asking around about the Gamekeeper in hopes of learning more about Mellors' past. She eventually learns that Mellors once served on the front lines, earned the favor of a colonel, and could have risen to a very high rank. He is also well educated and speaks fluent English, but he has endured an unhappy marriage and was abandoned. Though he never divorced, he willingly chose a low-paying job with little status because he wanted to stay away from people and avoid becoming further entangled with the world's power and money. After learning Mellors' story, Connie begins taking frequent walks through the woods, her mind filled with memories of their strange encounters and the thought of seeing him again. Mellors also seems to notice her unusual behavior and interprets the lady's actions as a hint.
You don't appear a coward.
There's things I rightfully fear.
Are you afraid now?
Yes.
Of me?
Not you. A world in you.
And so, the two of them enter that dark, damp cottage once again. Everything that happens between lovers now happens between them, as time slowly seeps from the warm skin of their two bodies like sweat, until dusk arrives. They move like lovers through the dense, reed-filled woods and briefly bid each other farewell beneath a shaded tree. This also marks the beginning of an even greater tragedy. After enduring one agonizing electrical treatment after another, Clifford finally no longer dares to hold on to any hope. He feels deeply indebted to his wife while also depending on her more than ever. To make it up to her, he even convinces himself to allow her to have a child by another man. But his only condition is that Connie swear never to leave him.
I mean only that the man doesn't matter. Only the creation of our child.
Clifford, you appall me that you would humiliate me thus!
I crawl upon my belly, Lady Chatterley, to avert my eyes, while under my own roof another man will perform on my wife the act God has stolen from me. The humiliation is mine.
This decision makes their relationship extremely complicated, leaving Connie trapped in profound conflict and turmoil. She wants to fulfill her husband's wish, but she cannot betray her own heart. Despite the Gamekeeper's lowly status, Connie has fallen too deeply to pull herself free. Ultimately, driven by her body's instincts, Connie resolutely runs toward the Gamekeeper. The scene shifts to Sir Clifford Chatterley, who decides to hold a banquet after struggling with the idea for a long time. He specifically invites Connie's first love from her school days, hoping to stir something in his wife and make her realize what she truly wants. As the two of them walk hand in hand onto the dance floor, Clifford sits alone in his wheelchair, his eyes filled with endless regret and disappointment. Before turning away and leaving, watching this, as a man, I cannot truly imagine just how much pain Clifford must be feeling at that moment. In the blink of an eye, 2 months pass, and Connie is now pregnant. When she shares the good news with her husband, a false smile appears on his face. Clifford promises his wife that he will treat the child as his own flesh and blood, but he cannot suppress his curiosity and jealousy, and he desperately wants to know who the man behind the pregnancy is. Connie sees the struggle and unease inside him, but revealing the Gamekeeper's identity would be dangerous, so she merely tells Clifford that she will arrange everything carefully. With matters already having gone this far, Clifford has no choice but to announce to the world the good news that he finally has an heir. But to Connie, this announcement hits like thunder and leaves her deeply unsettled. This is because British society in the late 19th century is divided by rigid class barriers. Mellors once showed Connie the world he lives in, where people are deeply hostile toward women. Connie wants to stand up and teach those who show disrespect the lesson they deserve, but the Gamekeeper has long since grown used to it.
You can either be Connie Reed of Tevershaw Village, or you can be Lady Chatterley, but you can't be both.
At this point, Connie becomes afraid and rushes to the Gamekeeper that very night to say one final goodbye, but the maid sees everything clearly from the window. The next day, she secretly enters the Gamekeeper's cottage and discovers a diary on the windowsill. Its page is densely filled with accounts of his relationship with the lady. The maid then gives the diary to Sir Clifford. The maid is a relative of a worker who died in a mining disaster. and that mind belongs to Sir Clifford Chatterley. For years, she has silently endured the pain of that loss while waiting for a chance to take revenge.
Lady Chatterley's lover and father to her child, Oliver Mellors. One shred of the humiliation I felt, well, you'll have the punishment you deserve.
After discovering the secret, Clifford summons his wife outside alone, and Connie feels as though the entire sky has collapsed around her.
We are among the ruins, the roof brought down, of your making, Lady Chatterley. We've got to live, no matter how many skies have fallen.
His meaning is clear. The child may stay, but its father must leave. However, the maid's revenge does not stop there, and she spreads word of the lady's affair with the Gamekeeper throughout the entire town. Now, to contain the scandal, Clifford sends all of his men to hunt down the Gamekeeper, and their next target is the child in Connie's womb.
Word travels fast. He'll have flit already if he knows what's good for him.
Hearing this, Connie runs toward the Gamekeeper like a woman possessed, only to find his home completely deserted. Only now does she realize that she may truly have fallen in love with Mellors. Fortunately, Mellors escaped the earlier siege, but after a brief embrace, the two must say their final goodbye. Mellors prepares to face everything alone, but Connie refuses to let him lose his life.
But you've put a child into me.
I've a fear of putting children in the world. The world that's come in, this machine world with machine men. Everything ends.
No. You've just given up.
Seeing Connie so determined, a spark of defiance also ignites inside Mellors. He catches up with the tear-streaked Connie and, for the first time, says the 3 words he has never dared to speak. Connie then confesses everything to her husband and begs him to spare them both.
Do you mean to say that you would marry him? Bring him to me.
But when Connie actually brings Mellors before him, Clifford finally loses control of his emotions.
You have broken the holy order of things as certainly as if she'd lain with an ape.
A generation of fops and cowards with half a ball each. Yeah, you lost yours in France, man. At least you got out with your life, unlike most you ordered into the teeth of the enemy.
We were more likely to fall in battle than the ordinary man. England's finest sons, her future rulers, gone. And who takes their place? You? Your offspring?
Me and my sort. I
remember you.
When you were laying wounded, and I stood over you. And the look I saw in your eyes then is very like the one I see now.
What would you know?
I would know.
You will collect what's owing to you and vacate my property at once. As for you, Lady Chatterley, your child will never be better than a bastard.
Faced with the baronet's mockery and insults, Mellors answers without holding anything back. As Connie and Mellors walk away hand in hand, Clifford uses every ounce of strength in his body to shout after them.
Have your divorce, Lady Chatterley. Have it. Take her. She's yours. And mine? Mine is the world.
On the surface, the film appears to tell the story of a forbidden romance, but it is really the story of a woman struggling to save herself from the chains that bind her. Everyone has the right to pursue love, though each person goes about it differently. Despite his lowly status, the Gamekeeper Mellors possesses a pure soul and genuine humanity. He is free of aristocratic hypocrisy and unafraid of society's judgment, which is exactly what Connie lacks inside her elegant prison. Their love across class lines is never merely a lustful impulse, but the mutual salvation of 2 free souls and a silent rebellion against a cold and rigid class system. I would really like to know what you think of Connie's actions. Please tell me in the comments.